Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Good to see you. I am here with a very special guest. I'm ridiculously excited to talk to Jodi Shaw. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Jodi Shaw, and tell me if this is right. So, you're singer, songwriter, librarian, contrarian, reluctant culture warrior, and I believe you were number 7 on Spotify's list of up and coming rappers for the year 2020. Did I miss anything? Did I miss anything on that? On
I
that
love
list?
that introduction. Thank you, Truman.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for being here. So for people that don't know you, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, if that's okay, and I suspect it will be. But for people who don't know you, kind of how are you in this space? What's your story? Who is Jodi Shaw? Like really? Yeah,
Like really.
yeah.
The reason I'm in this space, I guess, this space being a public um, kind of anti-woke, I guess, or politically homeless
Sure,
third
sure.
space is because of my situation at Smith College. Am a former employee of Smith College. I lived in Brooklyn, New York for many years, worked as a musician, singer, songwriter. Then I had kids and I needed a regular job. So I became a librarian. I got divorced and needed basically a place where my kids could live in the same neighborhood as their father. And so I said, well, and I had attended Smith College as a student. And I remembered Northampton, Massachusetts as being a very liberal, um, cool town, like anything goes. So I said, let's move to Northampton. So we moved to Northampton. I started working at Smith, and I became aware pretty early on that something was wrong. And I didn't quite, I knew it had to do about the racial stuff, the fact that so many people were talking about it all the time, and that being white was an issue.
What year
Um,
was this?
this was in 2017.
Yep.
And it was a little bit of a kind of a shock because, to be honest with you, I'd been working at Brooklyn Public Library, like riding the subway. I mean, living in New York City, which, unlike many cities, is not as segregated as many cities. Like, everybody rides the subway in New York City, everybody, because it's simply the most expedient manner of getting around town. And so New York, in that way, like, you really are rubbing elbows with everybody all the time, and it's a walking city. And so it's very diverse. And so it was kind of like a shock because I hadn't really been exposed to workshops or rhetoric. I mean, I'd kind of like on the edges heard about it, but in terms of my workplace or my personal life, sorry, there's a cat here. Hadn't
What's the
really.
cat's name?
Her name's Pepper.
Pepper. That's great.
That's Pepper.
I'm a sucker for cats. Sorry. Anyway, go on.
She's great. Me too. I love cats.
Yeah.
I also love dogs though. Um,
Okay.
so
What about
anyway,
goldfish?
yeah, I love goldfish. Yeah, yeah, I love
Llamas?
goldfish. Would you say piranhas?
Llamas or piranhas?
Yeah, I
Let's
love
go down
all
the
animals.
list.
I really love animals a
There we go.
lot.
What about
In fact,
insects?
yeah, I like insects.
No,
Like if I see a cockroach, I'll give it water. Like I put water in front of it, and like sometimes I drink water.
isn't it weird though, just as an aside, that we're kind of in this time where, like, so you said I love cats, but then also I love dogs, that we've kind of been conditioned to, like, if we say we like something, that
You caught
people
that,
people will
Truman.
take it they will take it as this, like, well, why not? What about, are all dogs? Some dogs kill people. What about three-legged
Yeah,
dogs? Like, and so it's like we're just been
true.
conditioned to do this thing. And
True.
anyway,
Although
sorry.
I think my motivation for saying that is because there's somebody I have a crush on who is a big dog lover.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
They
Okay.
probably won't even be watching this. Oh my God, he's taking notes. No, don't write that down.
No. I wasn't. Check yes or no. All right. Anyway, sorry. Go on. I totally derailed that. I apologize.
You are right. You are right. Like we don't want to exclude any.
We're very into inclusivity here.
Yes, as is Smith College. That's another thing I hadn't. So it was a little bit of a like culture shock. It was a culture shock in many ways, just moving into car culture, having a yard, having bushes, a lawn, a house. I mean, driveway, like grocery stores. I mean, there's all this like it's a huge culture shock leaving New York City. Anyway, but to
That's right.
move to a place that was like mostly white, mostly middle class, mostly Democrat, like very homogenous in many, many ways. And to hear so much stuff about race, like everybody talking about race and being white and white privilege, it was like, whoa, what's what's going on all of a sudden? Like it's mostly white people all talking about being white, um and so I didn't actually, but I thought, well, they must know what they're talking about. This is Smith College, this is an elite school, and I went along with it, but there was always this nagging feeling that something was not right. Anyway, cut to, there were a lot of things happened at Smith. It So at first I didn't question it outwardly. I inwardly questioned it, and I felt guilty about inwardly questioning it. And so it was a process. I went through this whole process, and by the time the final incident occurred, there were many incidents along the way, where I said in a mandatory meeting, when I was asked to discuss my race, I said I was kind of done talking about my race, or I didn't want to participate in this rhetoric anymore. And I said, I'm not comfortable discussing my race at work. And I was told by the hired professional facilitators that any white person who declines to discuss their race or exhibits discomfort, I think they said, when asked to discuss their race, is actually exhibiting white fragility, and that is a power play. And
Mm.
so my genuinely expressed feelings of discomfort were framed as an act of aggression, and it was a public shaming. I felt ashamed. And my heart started beating. I got, and that was really the line for me at Smith College. I thought, okay, now I can no longer just keep my head down and my mouth shut and just have my own feelings about this stuff and just kind of like pretend to go along with it. Now I'm being they're basically, if you do not speak the words, you will be publicly shamed. And that's what happened. And so that's when I filed an internal complaint, and just the incidents kept going on from there. I mean, they really fobbed, I don't know if that's a word, but they fobbed that up. Can I swear on here?
Yeah, of course.
I believe they fucked up that internal investigation, because they're so into this rhetoric,
Probably on purpose.
believing that white people cannot be discriminated against.
Yeah.
The investigator, the person who's supposed to investigate these things, was kind of, I think she was kind of like perplexed. She even asked me, "Do you believe in white privilege?" I mean, it was almost like she couldn't believe a white person was filing a claim of racial harassment or
Yeah.
racial discrimination. So anyway, I really tried to work it out with Smith College. I really tried very, very hard. And by then George Floyd was killed. Like as soon as I filed my and then it went into hyperdrive. All of this racial obsession, and it got worse. And so then I started thinking I might have to do the nuclear option. I might have to make a YouTube video. And I thought, well, maybe 2 people will watch it, or 1,000 people or more will watch it. I had no idea what was going to happen. So I set up my social media accounts just in case. And finally it became clear I was going to have to use the nuclear option. Like they were not responding. They just kept doing the thing that I had filed the complaint about. And so I made the YouTube video, and that pretty quickly got a lot of views. And that's when I knew, okay, this is going to turn into a thing. And then 48 hours later, the president of Smith College released a public letter saying this person does not speak for us or any part of the community, the Smith community. And that's when even then I took it as an invitation to dialogue, and I made another video responding to her letter. And then a month after I made the first video, continued to make videos about different topics about Smith College. A month later, I was put under investigation. And then they offered me a settlement. We went into settlement negotiations, and in the end, I turned down a settlement. And then it was like, well, I guess you can come back to work. And then I had to decide. I simply could not return into that environment. It was so abusive and so hostile at that point, especially after I made the video, which was within my rights. It's within your rights, by the way, everybody, under the Federal Labor Relations Act. I think it's called. Don't quote me on that.
Improve
To
working conditions.
improve, yeah, to try to improve work in concert. And I was trying to work with, I knew other staff who felt the same way. I was trying to improve working conditions at Smith. It was an earnest, honest effort, and anyone can do that. And so they put me under investigation for an unrelated matter because they couldn't put me under investigation for the video. It was obviously pretextual, in my opinion. And I just couldn't go back to that environment. And so I considered a constructive discharge. I resigned,
Yeah.
and now I'm here. Here I
Cool.
am in this space.
In the
That's how I
space.
got here.
Good. So I have a few. So whenever I'm thinking about these conversations, there's like, I don't know if you watch the Loki series, but there's like the sacred timeline is like where my thoughts go, and then I have these little branches that come out as people talk that I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna go there, but I will go there. So
Yeah.
I do have a question really fast. So whenever you said that it was a culture shock to be around grocery stores, that was a thing that I can't personally identify with. So if you, I know this is completely unrelated to everything you just said, but just for my own curiosity, can you please elucidate a little bit what you mean by
Well,
car culture in grocery stores as like a
oh
culture shock?
yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, people from New York would know. It's. I mean, there are grocery stores in New York, right? But it's a whole different kind of. It was almost like, at least me, like you're almost like shopping as you go. Like you pick up things almost every night on the way home, just because there's so little space in apartments. Like like in New York, if you go to Costco, I mean, there is a Costco there, but it's almost like you need another apartment to put your stuff in to buy these big. So the stores are little, they're little, and there's often cats in the store. These
Nice.
little stores, they're very cramped, and because you're don't have most New Yorkers don't have a car. I think it's like 55% of New Yorkers don't have a car or more. Like you're always carrying stuff, and so you kind of shop as you go, and the stores are very little, and you don't have a car. I mean, I think by the time you get a car in New York, if you get a car, which I did eventually, then like in a weird way you're like a real New Yorker then, because then you have to take care of a car. I don't know, there's this weird thing.
Hmm.
I don't know, but I remember like I hadn't been in a real grocery store, like an American outside New York grocery store, in years and years and years and years. And I remember I went to one, and it was so massive. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, oh my God, I couldn't even see. Like, oh my God. You have to walk all the way to the end, and then there's a whole aisle of cereal.
Yeah.
A whole aisle.
How
You
about
know,
that?
in New York, you shop in these the tiny stores, there's maybe like three kinds of cereal. I mean, and it's weird, and yet these stores have everything you need, like nail clippers, a handball, like I don't know, like it's just it's a totally different culture when you don't
Sure.
have a car and you're living in New York. You have to kind of shop as you go. You're riding on a bus. That you have like a cart that you push. I had one of those to put your stuff in.
Yep.
You just shop more frequently
Huh.
in smaller stores, instead of like here you like get in your car, you go and you park in a parking lot.
Yep.
And then you go in the store and you have this big cart, and you put all like 20 bags in the car, and then you come home, and then you're done for like the week or for 2 weeks.
Yep.
And then you go back and you do it again, versus New York, where you're like kind of every 2 or 3 days you pick up more stuff on the way home from work or whatever. And in
Wow.
my case, I had a bike. I was a big bicyclist in New York, and I had one of those big bikes that my kids could ride on the back on, and you could
Oh,
put
cool.
groceries in the side. And I was a member of the Park Slope Food Co-op, which is probably the biggest grocery store I ever shopped in, which was like totally cramped and tiny. Like, I mean, tiny
Yeah.
compared to like Safeway, or I
Yeah.
mean, just whoa.
That's interesting. So there's a really interesting parallel there with small towns, because what I mean, what you're describing
Yeah,
is a
it's
convenience
it's like
store.
a small town, and
Yeah.
in New York, if you're there for a long time, and it's me, especially I had kids, like I was literally living my life within a 10-block radius.
Yep.
I mean, and everyone in New York has a podiatrist, by the way. Dentist, doctor, pediatrician, podiatrist, store, all your stores, even my job. I'd been there so long, I'd been able to kind of craft this life.
Yep.
I never even went into Manhattan anymore. I was living in Brooklyn. I mean, everything was in, I mean, not 10 blocks, that's extreme, but within a couple miles.
Yep.
Because that's just like, for efficiency, just whittling it down, so that getting from point A to point B is so difficult in the city, that I don't know, it's just, and it was like a small town. Like you'd go to the bodega, and the guy have to, if I didn't have money, or if my kids went, he would just say, I just take it, pay me later. I mean, it
Uh,
was very, and then the guys that own the bodega live above the bodega.
yep.
and like you're always seeing people, because you're always out on the street. It's very much like an in real person community. I mean, the kid's pediatrician lived, like, everyone lives in the community.
Yeah.
And God, even their pediatrician was like, we would see you for free. Like, it was like, it felt like it really feels more like a small town than Northampton ever could feel. I mean, I
Sure.
imagine Northampton used to feel that way. Like, you used to be able to go downtown, and people have told me stories where all the people who own the shops live downtown, and there's parking garages here now. So I think the cars have a lot to do with it. Like, as the prices went up in Northampton and it got gentrified, and people who own the building are from New York, and people have to drive to work because they don't live in Northampton anymore. A community changes and it kind of fragments. I think that's just my theory.
Yeah. I'm gonna clip the timelines that are branching off in my mind because I have so many like thoughts and stuff that I could
It's
talk about here.
interesting. It's a real culture shock when you've lived in New York City for a long time. Unless you have, like, I think if you have a lot of money in New York City, you're always taking cars and stuff. I don't know. But yeah, that was my experience. I've never been a big car lover.
Okay.
I've always had a thing about car. And I lived in Portland, Oregon for 5 years
Mm,
too, in the 90s though.
there you go. All right. When it was just
No
like
car.
grunge music and
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
um I feel like I had it doesn't matter. Oh, the last time I was on a subway was like 5 years ago, and the time before that, and it wasn't even in this country, and the time before that, I don't even know, maybe a decade before that. Like that's how infrequently.
hmm.
I bet you I've been on a subway less than 5 times in my life.
So many
Um,
cars.
yeah,
Or
because even in cities like that's not no, because whenever I was in China, it was buses, so it wasn't
okay.
even subway there. But in cities like Kansas City, it's there's some trolleys downtown, but usually I would drive. And those are
Yeah.
new. Those are electric cable cars downtown, and those are new.
Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, it's mostly like it's very utilitarian. Some cities you really need to be on public transportation. It's just the only
Yeah,
way to go. And in New
Chicago
York,
is like that too, I think.
buses a lot too. Yeah,
Yeah.
but and you can rely on them because it's so frequent. It was
Yep.
like that in Portland too. Like, I just always rode the bus or my bike. Like, it was
Yep.
just because there was always a bus every 10 minutes, and it was
Yep.
only $1 at the time. It was just, why have a car? You
Can
get
I
every.
can I deviate and tell you a funny story about my inexperience on public transit?
Yeah.
And then we'll get back on track. I know where we were. I know where we were. So I was in this is the stupidest story. So we were in the Cinque Terre in southern Italy, and the buses had different color assignments. So there was like orange bus and red bus and these yellow buses and stuff. And we were staying at this. It was me and a bunch of my friends, and we were staying at this like kind of Airbnb place. And me and some people left to go get like groceries or something. Actually, no, this was in. No, it was yeah, it was that place. It was that place. It wasn't. This wasn't in Rome. So anyway, so we go and get dropped off at this grocery store. It's awesome. We get the stuff, and one of the people who I was with just said, "Hey, just remember that I think it was like yellow bus, that the yellow or orange bus, goes. That's what it'll take you home." Um, and so whenever we get back out to get on the bus, I'm just like, oh, so it's the yellow bus. Yellow bus goes home, or orange bus goes home, right? And I didn't know that there was like obviously like 50 orange ones and 50, and they all had these different routes. So we're stuck on this, is me and two of my friends. We're on this bus, and I'm trying to explain to the driver, I'm like, this is just the one that takes us back to this other place, right? And he's like, what? I'm like, all I know is like yellow bus go home or orange bus go home. Like, that's it. This is the one. And he's like, these idiot Americans. My buddy is trying to use his like compass app on his iPhone to try and navigate back. We like rode around town, got on some bus. We're like, we are so screwed. We're so lost. And we finally found like some guy who spoke a little bit of English, who was able to communicate with a different bus driver on a different bus to get us there. It took us like 4.5 hours to get back to the place we were staying. And it was like literally maybe 10, 12-minute bus ride from where we'd gotten originally dropped off at. That's like how completely ignorant. Now, of course, there's a language barrier there we're running into because if we were somewhere where people were speaking English, I could say, okay, it's next to this and this and this, right? And they'd be able to explain it. But it was like one super embarrassing because whenever I get back, I'm like, I just thought it was the orange bus that took us back. You said the orange bus, and they're like, okay, but yeah, there's a lot of those. Like, it's the orange bus is the bus line you need to get on, but it's not like that bus only goes to this bus stop. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I know that. I think I knew that, but anyway, that's how completely. I mean, and to this day, my friends like still like give me crap, like, dude, you're so dumb. Like, stop it. The bus goes home, freaking moron.
Did
Okay,
your
so
groceries like you had groceries?
yeah, it was actually we were there, and it was around
Oh,
Thanksgiving,
healthy.
and I
Oh.
went and we made a Thanksgiving dinner. And no BS, man, this is how uncultured I am. And in my defense, I was not the only one who felt this way. I was so underwhelmed by Italian food. Their pizza was terrible. It's like they got it a quarter right every single time. So you get one, and it would be mozzarella, and then the one with meat was like raw meat and no sauce. And then there would be like one with just sauce and like a piece of
Maybe,
spinach. And it's
maybe
like you put all these things together. You put them all together. You're almost there. You see, you got 5 options. Look, think of these as ingredients. You need to put all of these together, and then now you have a pizza. And like there was like I got some of the Italian like Italian food was good, but the pizza was just, oh my God. I came back. This is again just how uncultured. Came back home. The first meal that my wife and I made was I made a 5 cheese bacon hamburger mac and cheese pizza with homemade crust. And I ate that. And that was better than any pizza I had in Italy. Was I made that like Iowa State Fair, Nebraska State Fair, like garbage mac and cheese pizza. And I was like, this is way better than a freaking slab of mozzarella on a cold piece of whatever this is. Like none of it was hot. I think the only hot one was cheese. And I'm like, put some meat on this thing. Anyway, okay.
maybe they
So
think their reputation is enough, like they don't have to try anymore.
maybe, I don't know, but like one of the people who I went with was like, dude, you think you've had pizza? Wait till you have Italian pizza. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it's good. And I get there, I'm like, looking, I'm like, am I being punked right now? Like, Ashton, where you at, bro? What is this? This is a slab of mozzarella on a cracker. Like, that is not pizza. That is like a hobo meal. Um, okay, so anyway, with Smith, one of the things that I saw that was there's a lot of parallels between what happened with you at Smith and my experience in education, and I won't go into that, but there was one line that I heard you say in one of your interviews that I was like, oh my God, I so identify with that, because you were like, and you kind of touched on it here, where you're like, okay, I started this, in good faith. Of course, it was good faith the whole time, and you have all these moments where you think, okay, maybe this will be it. Maybe
Yeah.
now they'll get it. Maybe
Yeah.
now they'll get it. Whenever this stuff happened with me, it started in February 2020, and my wife knows, so I don't have a sweet tooth at all. I would rather have like a piece of bacon than almost any like treat, maybe except for strawberry barb pie. That's like one of the exceptions. So my wife knows that if I'm really, really, really stressed, I'm not drinking alcohol, I will go buy like some Reese's, because I'm like, I can't drink right now because it'll be bad. But I do like Reese's. And so I bought like this bag of like miniature Reese's candies, like threw them in the freezer because I was really stressed about stuff that was going on at work. And I got to the last one. I said, I'm just going to save that for when this is all over. And there was all these milestones where I'm like, okay, whenever this happens, like after this meeting or after this letter or after this thing, then it'll be okay. Then that'll be the clicking point. That Reese's is still in my freezer because
Mhm.
they're none of those things. And now it's done. I need to find a time to eat it because I lost my job, and the union was like, yeah, we're not going to fund you because we suck. Anyway, it's a whole nother thing. But like, I so identified with that moment because there is a moment you go from, you have a thing in your mind where you're like, this is going to get worked out, that we're going to be able to work this out. We're playing by
Yeah.
the same rules. I think one of the things you said in one of your other interviews, whereas you talked about, okay, we all use logic, reason, and evidence, right? Like we're all like, this is what we use. And so you think that you're operating in the same by the same rules, using the same paradigms, and then something shifts and you go, that's not what's happening here. And
Yeah.
so you can even see that in some of those other like older, I mentioned before we recorded, like some of those older interviews where you can tell you're still working this out. Like, okay, I still have hope that we're gonna be able to get there. And so like what was the moment for you? Like I remember there was a moment where I'm like, I'm never gonna eat this damn Reese's. This is never gonna happen. Like what
Mm.
was the moment for you when you're like, we are not playing by the same rules. We don't have the same goals. That was a big one for me where I'm like, I thought we all just cared about kids. I thought that was the thing. And it's clear that these people are not operating under that paradigm. Their main priority is not these kids. It's my main priority. And so what, you know what I mean? You have a thing where you're like, something's different here. What was that for you?
That's a hard moment too. It's like almost a loss of innocence.
So hard. Yeah.
You think surely the best interest of the students, I mean, Smith is education too. Surely if they could just see how this is hurting the
Yep.
students, if they can't see how it's hurting me as an employee, at least surely they could, their main mission, surely they can see how it's bad for the students. Gosh, I mean, it was a process, but I think the final moment for me when I realized that they were not going to, geez, there were so many, it was like very incremental. Um, I think there were two real moments. One was when I met with the head of the Office of Inclusion and Equity. I think I can't remember the name of the office, but it's inclusion and equity are the words in it. They kept changing. It was diversity, inclusion, equity, then it was inclusion, equity. When I met with him and he couldn't give me a definition, I started focusing on definitions of words because then that's when I started realizing like I don't think we're talking about the same things.
Yeah.
Like when
Yeah.
we talk about equity or inclusion or whatever. So I focused on equity and he couldn't really give me a definition. He said, when I think of equity, I think of this. And he used a metaphor. And I was like, was that an official college definition? And he said, well, no. And then he suggested I read Ibram X. Kendi's book. So I was like, well, so is that the official book? Like, it was like, so I started realizing, wow, they don't even know what they're talking about. This is the head of equity and inclusion. It has the word equity in the title of the department that he runs. And he's unable. So then I started like being like, whoa, like there's something really, really wrong here. And then the final moment that I realized that they were not interested in any of this was really when when they put me under investigation. That was like, okay, we're done. Like they they obviously just want to get rid of me. They just want to they don't want to work anything out with me. Even when the president wrote that letter, I thought, surely if I approach this with an open heart, as she's reaching out to, even though clearly she's casting me out by saying I don't speak for any part of the college, which is wrong. um, Clearly, at least she's making an effort. I even took that in good faith. Now looking back on it, it was clearly just her announcing to the world that,
I
look,
disavow.
we have to keep her employed because she's covered under this law. But we it was like a hidden message, but really otherwise we would fire her.
Yep.
We would fire her ass.
Yep.
Even then, I tried to have an open heart throughout all of it and really believe the best in all of them. And I'm glad I did that looking back because
Hmm.
I can't say that I ever, like, you know how you get super emotional and then you say shit and then you wish, and then you never know. Like, you never know. Well, maybe if I had tried to work it out, like, I know for sure I can say in good conscience that I really, really tried to work it out with them. And I really gave them the benefit of the doubt right up until the final moment when they put me under investigation. And that's when I knew this is not, they don't, they're going in a very bad direction. And they are determined to continue going in a very bad direction.
Yeah.
And but the question in my mind is how many people there really believe in the real tragedies. You know, you have your real believers. This is the right direction. This is the way to make society better. I think most of the people going along with this don't actually believe that, but they're going along with it anyway. And that in my mind is like worse,
Yeah.
I think,
The,
because you know that it's you know it's bad and you're doing it anyway out of this fear. And it's yeah, it's bad for you. It's causing, but like the students that you, it's your, that's your job, is to care for these students and participate in this environment where the students are your customer, I guess, for lack of a better word. Like these are young people who are just learning about the world, and the psychic damage that you are participating in. Okay, never mind yourself. Maybe you don't care about your own psyche or your own soul, but these students, that was like, I mean, I can't even believe it. I really, really, really cared about the students a lot. And I can't believe that. I still can't believe it. It's hard to believe. I do believe it, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
that's the worst part, I think.
It puts a pit in your stomach. I literally have a pit in my
Yeah,
stomach just thinking about it right now. Like of how
I
there
know.
there was something that you said just a minute ago that I feel the exact same way of like there's a part of me that regrets my I do not a part of me. I do regret my naivete. I don't regret my approach because like you, I wanted to be able to say I did everything that I could. I have at the end of the day, there is nothing anyone can hang their hat on to say I didn't do my best. And even like with this thing where the union has said they're not going to fund any litigation against the school, there's an appeals process to that. I'm going to do the appeals process knowing that they're not going to do it, but just because it's like one more thing. And so it's like you want to be able
Yeah.
to say that you did your best, but it's and that's like a me thing, then that's a you thing, right? Like it's like I want to be able to be happy with who I am and be able to sleep at night, knowing that I did my best. I can't change what other people do. But there's like this one of the things you just said uh about how it's like how many people really believe this. It's not very many. And that's the thing that I noticed is one of the things I took away from last year, what despite all of the crazy things that happened last year, was actually the most emotionally impactful thing was this, and seeing people who I trusted, who I knew were good people, choose their own comfort and just see how much their own comfort and just see the cowardice.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really was one of the things I wrote a thing that got published on New Discourses. I made a few videos about it where I say the road to hell is paved with eggshells because everyone is in this emotionally abusive environment where they're walking on eggshells. And at this point, the people that are left kind of on the bench, I think are either cowards or the willfully ignorant. And I'm not sure there's much of a distinction between those two at this point. And I hate that. I hate the anger that I feel inside towards the people who I know better, but they're kind of looking down, like because they know they know that they should be speaking up, but they just lack the. And I don't want to put this in moral terms, as like they know they're a bad person or something, but they lack whatever it is, the spine, the gumption to speak out about something that's right. And I hate that I am almost as angry at those people as I am at the people that they're enabling. Because the people they're enabling they're going to do what they're going to do, right? Like, it's like, you're a crazy person. I don't expect a crazy person to act any differently than a crazy, or you're an ideologue. Like, you are a
Yeah, they wouldn't be able
religious zealot.
they
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to do it without the enablers. The enablers, because there's such a
exactly.
small fraction of the
Yep.
people actually, the enablers are really what are enabling this to occur. That's why we call them enablers.
Yeah. If you're at
Otherwise,
a
it,
meeting and like if I went to any meeting for any organization and a person got up there and said, we're going to learn about how amazing white supremacy is. And it's so great. And we're going to learn about the merits of the white race and all this other insane crap. And no one said anything. No one spoke out and said, that's wrong. This is evil. You would assume that everyone agreed with that. And it would create an environment where you're like, I guess everyone here is on board with this. And that's what
talking about,
empowers this garbage, is the people who are silent and don't say anything, even though they know it's wrong. And it creates, I say that this ideology thrives on a false perception of consensus. That is one of the strongest things that it has, is a false perception of consensus. And it has that false perception of consensus because of the people that are cowards. and are willfully ignorant. And I hate how much, I mean, I feel it right now in my gut of how much I hate that there are good people who are, and who really, I think, are well intentioned, but they're just cowards. They're just cowards. They just care more about their own comfort.
Yeah, I wonder. Definitely empathize with the coward part because I think we all make small compromises,
Yeah.
but I've been thinking a lot about what is it that makes somebody decide to step out of that group and speak up. Like, it's so easy to just go along, right? But what is it in somebody? And I remember somebody asked this on Twitter. What is it that makes somebody speak up when the stakes are so high when you speak up? Because let's face it, there's reasons for the cowardice. There
There's
are
cost.
very real material consequences. So you almost can't blame them. But then, but we can see clearly material consequences are rising. The
Yep.
more you stay, the longer people stay silent. But what is it that distinguishes the person who actually speaks out? And somebody asked that on Twitter, and it was like some combination of sensitivity, high sensitivity. There was like a lot of people had similar answers. A history of trauma, like some kind of
Mm.
trauma. And then it reminds me of something that Benjamin Boyce just tweeted out. Sorry, you can tell I live on Twitter. Just tweeted out about he used the word abnormal, but like it's the abnormal people who, when things fall apart, are going to be okay to be able to withstand it versus the quote unquote normal people. And I don't know if there's a clear correlation between the people who are the normal people being the people who aren't speaking out, or the people who wish to pretend to be normal, maybe. That they're going to have a harder time when things fall apart, and things are falling apart as clearly
Yep.
as we can see. So I think I don't know. I've just been thinking, like, what is it about a person that makes them speak out? And I said this to somebody, another journalist. I was like, I think it's 5 to 8% of the population. I think we know this from the Cultural Revolution. Somebody gave me this particular statistic that it's 5 to 8% of the population who believe in the ideology, and then a mass in the middle that are just kind of going along with it out of
Mm.
fear or their confusion, I think, is some of it too. Like, it's supposed to be good. I know something's wrong. And then I said, well, then I think it's 5 to 8% who are stand up and say no. And he said, I think it's more like 3%
Yeah.
stand up and say no. But I don't know what it is about that 3%. I mean, it's funny because a lot of the other people I've met in this space, maybe it's just because I'm a creative, but a lot of them I didn't even know they were creatives. Like, they're not, because that's not their, like, they might be a business person or whatever, and then I find out like they paint every day, or
Mm.
I don't know, like maybe there's a creative element to it, or a creative person is more likely because they're more used to being the abnormal one, or I
Sure.
don't know.
They're used to being contrarian, maybe. There's
Yeah,
this
I don't know.
there's this really bad movie called Never Back Down that's also quite entertaining. Um, that has this line in it. I mean, it's the cheesiest. It's just so cheesy movie. But it's like this underground MMA culture and like this high school in Florida or something. It's just so ridiculous. It has this kid in it who looks exactly like a young Tom Cruise, which is kind of interesting. But there's this line where I think it's the antagonist of the film, says there's two kinds of people in this world. Those who, when they get tagged, back the hell out, and those who get the hell in. Something like that. Like, whenever people who, when they get punched, they flinch and run away. And then there's those who lean in and say, okay, let's throw down. And I think that is probably one aspect of it. There are people, and maybe that, like you said, there's history of, trauma is a word that I think is really experienced concept creep, but for lack of a better word, I think people who've had hard experiences in life, who know what it's like, there's something about that. I think this is something I might have talked to Fedesi about. I can't remember, but it was where it's like, what is it about people? I think it wasn't in our conversation, but it was in a different conversation we had. What is it about people who've experienced really messed up things that kind of understand some of this stuff? I think part of it is that again, my theory is that we're all living in some form of emotion, an atmosphere of emotional abuse, and some people can identify it for what it is. Once I started floating that theory out there, I had so many people that were like, I've been in emotionally abusive relationships. I've had this thought for a while. This is exactly
Yeah.
what this is.
Yeah.
Um, and
Maybe.
and I think there's other people who like don't know that necessarily. And so they're just kind of like, okay, maybe in the early stages, whenever people get with emotionally abusive people, like there's these early stages where they don't really know that
Their
something is
first
wrong.
time. It's their first time being in a
Right, right.
situation.
Um,
And
and
it's
so,
worse because everyone else is in it, like going along with it, right? So they don't, it's almost
yep.
like you have nobody to check it out with.
Yeah, there's a front facing aspect and a rear facing aspect. I call it, so whenever you're with other people in it, it's like a cult. And when you are with people who like I think this turns people into unwitting emotional abusers, because they start to adopt the rhetoric and adopt the vernacular and the paradigms, and then they use those things with people that are not part of the cult. And then those people are like, what do you mean I'm fragile? What are you talking about for white fragility? And it's like, you just created a Kafka trap for me and I thought we were friends. But you didn't realize you created that Kafka trap for me. Like, you're making it where I can't say anything.
Hmm.
And like one of the hallmarks of a healthy relationship is the ability to give and receive no.
Hmm.
Right. So I need to be comfortable telling you no, and you need to be able to receive no from me, and vice versa. And if you can't do that, it's not a healthy relationship. And so much of this is like, people cannot say no. They can't say, I don't want to do that. But some people are able to identify that and some people aren't. Um, anyway, but there's something like, so I want to ask you about your journey to this point. And, one of the things where I was like, I want to know which Jodi Shaw I'm talking to, like where she's at right now. Because even just like whenever you talked about, I literally laughed. I remember in one of the interviews you talked about like how you're trying to escape the stuff in the library, and so you saw, you saw refuge in res life, and I like when I heard that I was like,
I was so naive. I was so
right.
naive.
And so because I know people who are like, I mean, did collegiate ministry for almost a decade, and so like I know like res life has been bad for a long time, like a really long time. And so whenever I heard you say like, okay, I thought I'd at least go get some solace in res life, I'm like, okay, like
I
there's
didn't go
the
academia.
only part of the college like that crap that's indoctrinated worse than res life is social sciences. Like res life is number two, right underneath social sciences, I think. So from that, Jodi, to like where you're like, it's a process and you're figuring this stuff out, to like now, where you're like, okay, I think we are in a cultural revolution. The digital iron curtain is about to drop.
We are,
Like
yeah.
where are you in terms of like where's your oh shit meter at? Maybe that's a way to put it. It's a little crass, but like I can tell that it's pretty low. Like there's a part where you go, okay, I heard it. So like just think of it like this. So like you're in your room, everything's cool, or you're in your house, and la la la, and then you hear a noise, and you're like, "What's that noise?" Maybe I didn't hear a noise, and then it's
Right.
like, "Okay, I heard that noise again," and then there's like the third time, you're like, "Maybe that was a tree branch," and then you hear it again, and it's like that's a little closer, and you go from like curious to okay, I'm a little anxious, and you're kind of wandering around the house, and you hear the noise again.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you open the door and there's the monster, and it's holding your decapitated family, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
too
lunging
late.
at you. Right. And so it's like you go from this thing from like curiosity to okay to oh my God. And so like where are you at in that particular thing? Does
I
that
think
make
I'm
sense?
past. I think the monster is like in my house, sitting on my couch having coffee.
Okay. Okay. I
And
like
now
it.
I'm strategizing for how can I live with this monster and still have joy in my life.
Hmm.
And I think to put that into real words,
Tell me about that. That's an
yeah,
interesting, yeah.
I mean, I think unfortunately, and this is the first time I'm saying this, in a recorded space, by the way. I had this real I was in New York City in July, and I had a major realization while I was sitting in the Van Gogh immersive immersive Van Gogh exhibit. All of these things were happening inside me, and one of them was this. I mean, I already knew this is a cultural revolution. I had been to I'd recently been to a book launch for Kenny Zhu, and I was talking to his parents, and they were like, all of this is textbook cultural revolution. It's textbook. And when if you think about it, it is. This isn't just academia. This is way out of This is the sports, religion. No matter how you feel about religion,
Yep.
people need it.
Yep.
Family. This
Load
is
bearing structures.
K through 12. Every single cultural structure. I think you put it as load bearing, right?
Yep.
Every single one, the load bearing ones. And I'm sorry, academics, but elite academia is not a load bearing structure. That structure.
I'm going to disagree with you on
Oh,
that. Can I give you my brief disagreement?
yes.
Can we sub out elite academics with knowledge acquisition for load bearing occupations? So we can afford for, like, I'm sorry, like some art people or something like that to have crazy ideas and not know how things work. That's fine. We can't afford for our neurosurgeons to not know what they're doing. We can't afford for our chemical engineers or petroleum engineers or our programmers or anything. Like, there are serious consequences to losing the competency of the occupations that make society run.
You're talking about
chemists.
Yeah, you're talking about civilization. You're talking about society. I don't know.
Exactly. So whenever you say like elite academics, I would slightly tweak that to, if you were to say, is it load bearing for us to have a mechanism for credentialing and passing competency onto like our astrophysicists? Absolutely. Because what would happen if tomorrow 70% of our neurosurgeons, or again, chemical engineers, any of those people all of a sudden did not know what they were doing? All of a sudden we're like, actually, equity.
Well, I guess that's part of a cultural revolution, right? You remove
Totally.
those people, but
does that make sense? So I wouldn't say all of academia, but there are some occupations that we have to have if we want to function as an advanced society.
If we want to function as an advanced, complex civilization in the way that we have, yes. But I don't know if that's counts as culture or not.
No, it's all together, because it allows for culture to exist, right? For us to,
yeah.
So anyway, but that's a deviation, but continue.
Yeah. Well, my counter argument would be, as long as the elite academia has been crazy, crazy, crazy for a while, as long as it was contained within the ivory tower, the rest of us were okay.
Contained in certain aspects, right? So it took a long time before it hit math, for example.
Right. We don't know the consequences of that.
Yep. Yeah, it was siloed off, but it, like all cancers, it spread.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah.
What were we talking about? Oh, the ocean. So I was in New York, so I realized the Cultural Revolution is here. It's in the uppermost levels. Somebody else told me that totalitarianism is never a top-down endeavor; it's a bottoms-up. And once a sufficient portion of the population is actively self-policing, then that sets the condition. Then the top starts to come in and take over. It's fertile ground, and I think that's already happened. I think it's good. We have the DOJ, the DOD, the Biden administration. It's, in my mind, it's already here. And what I am doing now, I just realized everything I'm doing, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still fighting it, but it's not so much fighting that, because I feel like that's here. It's more like I feel like I'm building. My focus is on building instead of fighting. Building a culture or a structure, networking, doing as much in person as possible to build this kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, a counterculture or a parallel culture, so that we can best survive what is a cultural revolution. And I believe the cultural revolution will continue and it will complete. And I just had this sudden realization that that's actually what I'm doing. I didn't set out to do that. My purpose was to fight this and push this back. But I had this realization that we who are doing that, I don't think we are going to be able to do that. I think it is too late,
Yeah.
but I'm not depressed about it because I think, well, we can still build, we can still have something good together. Those of us who don't, and we can make a world, and that when people, that we can still have some culture and we can still have good things and good connections with people. I mean, because really a cultural revolution, the goal and the end result is to cut individuals off from everything meaningful and important, every connection,
Yeah.
including within the family. I mean, even with other people. I mean, I just tweeted something about sex. It was about the vaccinated. You saw it. Do vaccinated people still have sex? And somebody tweeted back the New York City Gov, and I believe it was real, guidelines for having sex, sexual relations during the time of COVID. And I shit you not, it was like explore other methods of playing or something, like
Yep.
including walls. Like they
Yep.
were talking about glory holes
Yep.
and wear masks, even though that's not your thing. Like it, and it's just like, wow, like this is, I mean, and I won't even get into the vaccinations and the woke, how it's all authoritarianism. It's all like even just creeping into that part, like cutting us off from each other,
Yeah.
basically, like in every single way. I mean, people saying I'm not going to church anymore because it's gone woke. So now they're cut off from their religion, they're cut off from their community and their church. This is essentially just cutting us off from everything except the ideology and fear.
Yep.
And so I think the response to that is to build and also to attract, because it's a miserable life. Those the people who are captured by this ideology, I think they're miserable. And my what I wanted to ask are do the woke have sex? I mean, I don't know, or is it satisfying? I don't know, but
A lot of paperwork involved, from what I understand.
there were a lot of deconstructionism going on. Yeah, so I mean, my thing is to attract, like build something incredible and beautiful and connected, so that people who are out there like rah rah woke will look over and say, "Oh my God, those people like have something really good, and they have jokes, and it's funny, and they have like they're having sex, and they're like connected, and they have meaningful lives." So it's more of a pull theory. I think that's the only real. I don't think. I mean, I think we need the people out with the swords fighting, but we really need, like for me, my job as an artist, I'm fortifying the fortress, and I'm actually making the fortress beautiful. And I'm
Hmm.
inside the fortress with other people who are feeling connected and feeling good with each other, so that when these people come running towards the castle, when like the James Lindsay with his sword, like they get past him, they see the fortress and they're just like, oh my God, it's so, they drop their weapons and they're like, oh my God, it's beautiful. And then they look inside and they see all these people having parties and like laughing and being connected, and it makes them like, I want to be in that, I want to be in that castle, I want to be with these people, I don't want to be with these people I've been fighting, like I'm miserable over there. So that's my angle and that's my theory, and I think that's what I'm trying to do. I sorry to
Right.
be a buzzkill, but I mean, I
Yeah.
think we still need people fighting this, but um that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I'm kind of like, maybe it's more like the monsters in my house. So I'm trying to like, it's almost like being in a bad, like you're in a stuck in a relationship, so you kind of detach and you try to make your life as good as possible. I was in a bad relationship and I started meditating. Like I couldn't leave for very specific reasons. So I started meditating. I started to just improve, work on me.
Hmm.
I worked on myself, and I got, did all good things for myself, and I kind of built my own life up. And so the person then had a choice. They could either come and do the same thing with me, or they could leave the leave. And I won't tell you what happened, but it's kind of like with the monster. Like the monster, you can continue to sit there and make a mess on my couch, but I'm going to go off and do this stuff now. And I'm going to try to be happy, and I'm going to try to find other people who feel the same way. And I'm going to try to build a new community, because obviously you're stuck in a community that's really ugly and miserable. And I don't want to be part of that. And I'm not going to fight with you anymore. I don't want to engage with
Hmm.
you anymore.
So Dane Cook calls that a relationship, not a
A
relation.
relationship.
Yeah. Anyway, um, yeah. So there is something. I just to hit on what you said. I think I have a straight line with my thoughts here. Rarely, but I think I got one right now. Yeah, it really is an all-encompassing thing. I call it because I don't really like the word woke as much.
Yeah.
And so I call it far left orthodoxy because it does everything in it, or like flow for short. But you're right, because everything in it is the same thing. I'm working on a statement of faith for you could call it the Church of Woke, but their tenets are the far left orthodoxy or something like that. Because if you go to like any church's website, they'll say we believe, and they have all these things
Yeah.
like salvation and their different doctrines. And so I'm working on a we believe, and then all these things for this stuff. And a lot of the sections are like we believe uh, racism is the greatest threat facing mankind right now. And then it's all of these things. And then it ends with give us power. And we believe climate change is the greatest threat facing mankind right now. And then all these things and then give us power. And we believe that COVID is the greatest threat facing mankind right now. And then all these things and then give us power. All of it's a flow chart that
Mhm.
ultimately goes to here's the thing. We're
Give
going to
us.
make it worse to
Mhm.
make you think that it's worse than it is, and the end result is give us power.
Give
We're
us.
arsonists disguised as firefighters, and it's always just goes to give us power, and it's all about control. And to your point, this the question is kind of there's two things there. One of them is what I've noticed for a while, and your story is just one example of this, right? Is I've said for a while is that we have a converts versus casualties problem, that because this speaks to what you said about trying to bring people in. And one of the things I've noticed is that there is no real method, at least that I know of right now, that is like a working framework for trying to pull people out of this stuff, to try and convert them to not that. And that every person who enters this space in a way that becomes actionable, like that they become activated, is because they are a casualty of this ideology, of this far left orthodoxy, not because they were attracted to something on the other side.
Yeah.
And so I use the example of like if a general in an army, if all of his soldiers were wounded soldiers from the other side, like that's not a tenable thing, because the way casualties occur is as this thing expands in power. So
Yes.
as it expands out and out, it hits more people's lives. And some of them, most of them, as we mentioned, are just cowards and just go like this. And a few people, they get tagged and they get in the fight. But either way, they're activated as a result of becoming a casualty of it. They're not a convert. And so we need a way to make converse that doesn't just rely on people experience. Like, there's a saying, I feel like I say this in like every other podcast, but I'm from a small town in Missouri. So this is what happens is that some people can be told, and that's good enough. And some people won't believe you if you tell them, but if they see it, they'll believe you. And the
Yeah.
rest just have to piss on the electric fence themselves. And there's a lot of people who are in that space where it's like they're just gonna have to piss on the electric fence. But the problem is that they're bringing us along with them, and
Yeah.
by allowing this to expand. And so there's this thing that it seems like that you kind of hit on of, Rob Dreher calls it the do you build an ark or do you stack sandbags?
Oh, I
Because the flood is coming, like the way Kevin and I, my buddy Kevin, engineering politics community, we did a Think Spot event where we called it siege or separate. When it comes to these institutions, do we lay siege and try to take them back, or do we separate and build something new? And I
yeah.
think in some cases you do siege. I think that there are some that are worth doing that. I think in most cases you separate and you build an arc. And it sounds like you're talking about trying to build some arcs, especially with the creative community. So is that at least a fair representation
Oh my
of?
gosh. That's so dead on. I love that Roger said that. That's he says he's such a brilliant, what's the words, not linguist, but writer. I mean, he's so beautiful with language. Yeah, it is. I mean, I will say though that I guess you could call what I did a siege. I did try to
Yeah,
use
yeah.
words language, and then I realized that's not working and it's not going to work. I
Yep.
love that. I love that. Yeah. So that's my framework is it's the same. We build something, we build an arc. And for me, as a creative person, naturally I'm drawn to working with other creatives, but I also think that creatives happen to have a special talent for building things
Hmm.
and for figuring out ways to build things in very difficult environments.
Yeah.
That's what creative people do. They and they have there's limitations, severe limitations, and figuring out a way to make something in spite of those limitations. And if you think about it, it's weird because I just started getting interested in American history for some reason. And I mean, that's what the early patriots did, right? Like they went on the battlefield first and they got murdered, right?
Yep.
They went at dawn and
They tried to play by the rules. Yeah.
played by the rules and they realized but instead of continuing to go there and just getting completely decimated, they were creative. They thought,
Yep.
we're going to have to break the rules and we're going to have to do something different here. So there's still a little bit of siege in me. I
Yeah.
still think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of rich material here for comics and for artists, visual artists as well, that isn't necessarily something you making something political, like because I've never really been into political art,
Yeah.
never. It just never resonated with me. But to make real art out of this stuff, like stuff that people are kind of confused, like they don't know, well, is it which side is this on? Like because it's not on a side, it's just beautiful, but but it's using this deep material about why this is even happening in the first place. There's something
Mm.
primal about it. So I don't know, like that. I think you nailed it. I'm into building arcs at this point, and because I want to have a good life, and I think most people want to have a good life, and it's not a good life being
Yeah.
in this stuff. And I think that's the only way to convert people. Oh, in fact, Travis Brown put it this way in the woke Reformation, which I just saw the whole thing, or up until the last two episodes, about the God-shaped hole
Yep.
of
Yep.
the decline in religion, and now even more it's accelerating because of the woke stuff or the far left or orthodoxy. How do we fill that God-shaped hole? I think that the far left orthodoxy is filling it, but it's like stuffing a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't quite
Yeah.
fit for
Yeah.
people, and it's uneasy and it's miserable. So like I want to fill the God-shaped hole with I dare I say God, but whatever that hole is for people,
Yeah.
we have it. We're human. That's what I guess distinguishes us from animals. We need something else, some meaning. So
Yeah.
creating meaning, creating something meaningful and beautiful and resonant that connects us. This stuff divides us.
It's horrible.
It is
So,
horrible. It's
so tell me
horrible.
about how are you meaningfully filling people's holes? Tell me about that. The arc you're building, your third
That sounds
option.
so sexual.
Oh yeah, it was
Uh,
on purpose. So can I tell you a really interesting, you're talking about history. Can I tell you a history example of what you're talking about?
yes, please, Truman.
So there's this, I don't really know a lot about like medieval or ancient history, but there's a few things that I think are super interesting. And you're talking about creatives. So like there's this fascinating story about Julius Caesar, um, where he was, so if I remember right, this was like he was fighting against the Gauls, and he was sieging, I can't remember the city, but the leader was a guy named Vercingetorix. And so Julius Caesar there's this rebellion, the Roman Empire, they have all these different like places under them. These people rebel. So Julius Caesar has to go and try to quash this rebellion. Caesar's outnumbered. He's laying siege to a city, right? And he knows that reinforcements are on the way. So like conventional wisdom would say you either lay siege or you leave or you retreat, right? Like that's it. And so Caesar does this crazy ass maneuver where before the reinforcements get there, he spends like a week and has his soldiers, they cut down a bunch of trees around this city, and they build a giant like fence, a wall around the city. And then they build another wall around that wall. So they have like this little open, it's like a ring.
Yeah.
And so then whenever the reinforcements arrive, they have to lay siege to him, to Caesar. So he
Mm.
cuts them off from the reinforcements. It's called the Battle of, oh my gosh. Oh God, I can't remember. It might come to me. Alesia, the Battle of Alesia. And Caesar
It's spelled
creates,
with an
I think it's an
Alicia.
A. I think it's an A. There's like a really short, like crude animation. When I say crude, it's just like not like super sophisticated, but it shows like the way it works on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, I want to watch.
It's like maybe 12 minutes long, but it's like one of the most fascinating things that I've ever seen. And I've been thinking about it for like a couple of years now in terms of just like, because at the end, the guy breaks down the genius of Caesar and how he finds third options. He always
Yes.
finds ways to maximize and exploit his strengths to the max. He gets
Mhm.
every ounce of utility out of his strengths, and how he is able to exploit his opponent's weaknesses to the max and to find options and find routes that other people wouldn't think of. And that's that creativity. You're
Yeah.
finding the third option. You're trying to find what's the way that we haven't thought
Yeah.
of to try and bring people into this. And so you're
Mhm.
talking about, at least for you in your example, you're talking about this community building and stuff. So I mean, can you talk a little bit about that, of just like what's
Well,
kind of
community building
your
is
vision
important,
for
not just
this? You know,
yeah,
like
I would love to.
yeah,
The community building is not just important just to have community. I mean, there's community, that's an end in and of itself,
sure,
very
sure,
important.
absolutely.
But also because then when creatives get, because creatives need to kind of deprogram too, and that's part of it. Like I people need to talk about this to know they're not crazy, and there's a lot of creatives that are self-policing right now, and so first that has to happen.
The locked gate of creativity, I think you put it. I love that metaphor that you said, like
Did
that.
I say that? The
Yeah,
locked.
you said, oh man, yeah, this is, you were talking about how you noticed that with your own thoughts and ideas,
Oh
you had these
yes.
in a lot, and how creatives are doing that. You can't have the gate
You have
locked.
to
You
get
need to
rid of
have
the
access.
yes, you have to go past the no trespassing sign.
Sorry to interrupt. I thought that was great. I thought it was
Yeah,
so,
that's your job anyway as a creative. So, I mean, this stuff is really bad for creatives. I mean, because you're not able to do your job if you're self-policing. You have that hall monitor in your head.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so that's one thing a community of creatives serves, right? Is talking to each other and getting rid deprogramming. But the second, the more positive aspect is the building part is you get to spitball with each other. I mean, there's nothing like spitballing with super creative people. I mean, and telling stories and I mean, so I'm starting to do that. I'm starting to connect with other creatives and also just building out some digital platforms and just talking with you. I've learned so much like about other people who are having little communities and stuff. Um, but yeah, like I guess when creatives get together and talk, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Caesar came up with that all on his own. I think there's a lot you can do on your own, but there's so much you can do with a community to build stuff.
That's the battle that he discussed, that Mark Anthony became his right hand man, because Mark Anthony was able to repel this like unified attack where the Vercingetorix and then the people on the outside tried to do a pincer move on one part of the walls, and Mark Anthony helped repel that. And so Caesar noticed, this is a talented guy. And so that's when Mark Anthony became his kind of his
Ah,
guy, was from that battle.
yeah, I think yeah, it's really critical to know. It's so funny. I was just watching Better Call Saul last night,
Oh yeah,
that show,
yeah.
and I was talking to my kids about Saul. You know, the guy. His
All
name's
Goodman.
Jimmy. Yeah, Saul Goodman, but in
Yeah,
this one, he's
yeah.
Jimmy McGill still or whatever, and he's a creative. He is a creative, even though he's a lawyer. Everything he does is creative, and there's something about and also. And so I was telling my kids about it, and yet he always like ends up getting shit on, and like, and there's something about being creative. Like, it's not a hard and fast rule, but like when you're around other people who aren't necessarily don't have that talent or aren't creative, they don't always recognize it, you
Mm,
know. So it's harder to build stuff with them, or they don't get the vision or whatever, whereas other creative people tend to more quickly know what you're talking about or be able to see what you're seeing. So that's important for the creative building, but also like also there's something else about creatives I've noticed. There's an energy.
mm,
It's almost like they get a lot done. They're just always, and maybe it's like driven by anxiety or something. I don't know. It's just like this need to like always be making something. There's like
Yeah.
this weird energy, and who knows if it's comes from a negative or positive, but there's just a lot of product output and like and there's an urgency to it, to getting it done. It's almost like, because oh my god, the next idea. And I mean, creatives are always having 1,000 ideas.
Yep.
It's the one that you can't stop thinking about that becomes the one that you follow through with, and you have to let the others go. It's just like your little tree branches you're making now during this
Yeah.
conversation, right?
Yeah.
You're constantly having them, but it's like one starts to become bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's when you know that's the one you need to focus your attention on. And then there's this like urgency, at least for me, like I have to do it quickly because there's other ones forming, like there's other waves that are starting to come and build, and like I want to be able
Yeah.
to catch one of those as well. Like I'm going to surf this wave, but I'm going to immediately go out and catch the next one. So I want to, like, it's so I don't know, there's something about the energy of creative people, like that, in my experience, that I've met, that they have the drive and the energy to do it instead of just talking about it,
Yeah.
you know.
They're risk takers. And
Yes, that too.
there's that quote. I think I was watching or listening to while I was painting yesterday. This interview with Mencius Moldbug, Chris Yarvin, and he talked about how like reasonable people always conform to society because that's a reasonable thing to do. Unreasonable people refuse to do so. Therefore, all progress and innovation is completely contingent upon unreasonable people. And I hate that Kimberly Crenshaw came up with this term, mapping the margins, and because that's what artists do. The artists map the margins. They do, of society. And just because she came up with this idiotic like term, it's like, no, that's actually the perfect way to describe what an artist does. They play around in the gray area and find those places for the rest of us. They're pioneers intellectually and creatively. And when you're talking about like people not getting it, or people just treating creatives horribly because they don't understand it. Michael Malice has this thing in his new book On the New Right where he talks about trolling and jokes, and where people will say, well, that's not funny. And he's like, that's like a person who can't, I thought this was so brilliant. He said, that's like a person who can't solve a math problem saying, I don't get it, therefore math is stupid. It's like, no, it's not the math problem's fault that you don't get it. It's not for you. You might not think it's funny, but you are not qualified to make that assessment if you do not
Hmm.
understand it, And so, but creatives are the ones who are just kind of throwing that stuff against the wall. And I think they allow themselves to be taken over by those ideas and things. They allow that to happen. I think whenever I think about ideas,
Yeah.
like I have this like really stupid, really stupid mental
Tell
picture of how ideas, because I have these things. And I was telling you before, I used to do a lot more written content than I have lately. And I haven't had this happen as much for the last like maybe year or so. And it really bums me out. It's happened a few times, but it used to happen a lot more. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what is going on there. But where it's like an idea kind of comes and it's like a butterfly sometimes. It's like there and it's kind of like you're just doing your thing and it's just kind of there. And
Yeah.
you can either ignore it and just like that,
Yeah.
or you can kind of gently and just, I'm going to sketch this out and I want to understand it as much as possible. You can try to make a mental note of it and draw a picture of it later, but it's not going to be the same. It's going to be like your recollection of it. So it's not going to be as pure. And then there's other times where you might just take it and smash it and try to fit it into whatever thing you want it to be. And that's not going to be the thing either. But sometimes it's not a butterfly, it's like a dragon. It's just like you will deal with me, or you're gonna be tortured if you don't.
Go crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think a lot
Money.
of times, at least with my writing stuff, most times it's the the dragon, to be honest. But the times that I've like tried to like brush it off and or try to remember it later, it's just not near as good. But there's just something about ideas that I think they capture us. And it sounds like this idea of community building has been one of those for you, where something clicked where you're like, and maybe it goes with that oh shit moment where you're like, oh shit, this is here, this is happening. We need to build arcs, and those arcs will naturally exist in the form of community. It will naturally exist in the form of people who are like-minded, at least in the ways that matter, coming together and being creative and bouncing ideas off of each other, and then hopefully building something and bringing people in. It sounds like that's been one of those ideas that's kind of captured you. Is
Oh,
that fair?
captured me before that moment where I realized the cultural revolution is going to happen. I originally thought this is the way we can win, right?
Hmm.
Maybe it is, but I've kind of given up on. I've kind of just we need it no matter what.
Yep.
We need it no matter what. It's kind of like the abusive partner
Yeah.
story. Like I have to be with you, so I need to improve. I need to focus on me no matter what. Like
Sure.
or not. Maybe just bad relationship is a better analogy. Like you're either gonna come with me or leave, but I need to do this anyway.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But I mean, the culture part. I think what first I recognized was just how what I mean. I'm a cultural anthropology major.
Oh,
That's what I
cool.
did at Smith College, as a matter of fact. And so I think about culture a lot. I loved my major. We have these primal stuff. We're animals. We're
Yeah.
animals. The thing that distinguishes us from animals, I mean, you can argue like chimps, they have there are cultural aspects to groups of animals, but that
Sure.
really is what distinguishes us most from animals. We have this thing called culture, and culture serves purposes, right? So we have the in-group out-group. We have this tribal stuff. We're social animals. We have the in-group out-group stuff. That stuff's not going to go away. It's there. And this ideology, this orthodoxy, stokes that.
Yep.
And we happen to have cultural mechanisms for relieving the pressure of that, which would otherwise have us be killing each other, right? So,
Yeah.
um, and then it's, we have wars and all this stuff, but like we have cultural outlets. And one of those is called comedy. And another one, a big one, and I'm not a big sports person. I mean, I was an athlete, but is sports. Sports is literally the how we get out our in-group out-group aggression. It's like literally the place where you're supposed to sanction competition. You're supposed to be like, I'm gonna beat you, and or my team is better than your team. And I mean, we have extreme examples of the Red Sox fan getting out with a baseball bat. I mean, that's like going overboard, but it's like the one way we can relieve not just the athletes competing against each other, the spectators too. We go
Yeah.
in and we're going to kill you. And you're with, and it also allows us to connect with each other in a completely deep, non-political way. You have no idea who the person next to you voted for. Like, it doesn't matter. Like you're on the same team, and that team is the team you're going to destroy. And that's so important. Like I never realized how important sports were until I started really thinking this stuff through. And not only just for the glue, the connection in a non-political way, but getting out that aggression, that in-group, out-group stuff that's there. So now sports are being infected by
Yep.
this. And at the same time, this stuff's being stoked. This is a recipe for total disaster. And
Yep.
sports is just one arm of this tree. I mean, the comedy, I mean, gosh, you go and you laugh, you just can't help it. They say something really crude that you would never say in a normal format, like, and it's fucking funny, and you can't help it. You laugh, and it's like you're relieving the pressure of like this. It's like a socially acceptable form of relieving aggression in a way.
Hmm.
And so, to me, as a person who thinks about culture a lot, we have all these, and religion serves another purpose too. I mean, we have all of these ways of letting the air out of the tires being this pressure that builds up because we're animals and we're trying to live a civilized life. So it's like the line between civilization and just completely just killing and eating each other and warring factions and whatnot. And so this is a cultural revolution. So that's all being destroyed. And so that's originally why I started focusing. And as an artist, I can't focus on everything. I wanted to focus on art just
Mm.
because I'm an artist. And art, I think, is really, really important for connecting us, the human condition, and all that. And so I just wanted to focus on art. So that's originally why I started thinking about this stuff and thinking that was the way to go. And then I had this realization about, well, we need to do it anyway.
Yep.
Because we need something. I want that. I want to have a good life, and I want to have these outlets, and I want to be civilized with people and be able to love people and communicate with people. And so I'm doing that. It's for me, and hopefully maybe the cultural revolution won't happen, but I think it probably will.
Yeah. There's a, I was smiling because so today's Thursday, this past Saturday, so less than a week ago. So me and Kevin of Engineering Politics, Carlin Bursinko, and this other dude named James Darian, he's a really interesting thinker. He's actually, this was his idea of the commutation construct community. We have like this like think tank, like based in locals. And our conversation this last Saturday was about comedy and sports as load bearing institutions of society. And so we spent almost 2 hours talking about those two things.
Amazing.
Right. And comedy is like, I will send you the link. You can watch it, but comedy is something I'm so passionate about.
Carlin's been really into this too.
Yeah.
I'm psyched to see
Um,
that.
yeah. How old are your
Sorry,
kids? Really fast.
is Carlin what?
I said, how old are your kids?
Oh, really fast. Sorry. They're 11. I have twin boys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
and they're amazing.
Wow.
Amazing kids. I worry about them a lot. I just started getting letters from their school, like just like they moved into a charter school, which I talked about it's a lottery system, and I mentioned it at work one day at Smith, and my supervisor, another supervisor walked in and she said charter schools are racist. I mean, it's like the whole environment there, like you can't talk about anything. Anyway, they go to charter school, and one of the reasons I wanted them to go to the charter school is because it felt like the school they were going to was just so focused on inclusivity. It was actually felt exclusive. You know how
Oh,
that
yeah.
goes.
Oh, yeah.
And this new other school focused on self responsibility and the individual and all that. And I really was, because I think that's the only way you can have a healthy community is if you focus on having healthy individuals. And so, but I started getting letters from the school. I got one out on January 7th about what to tell your children about this. And it's like, they're starting to, it's like, that it's this and that, and never mind what they think it is. It's like, why do I have to tell my kids anything? They don't even know this happened. Like,
Yeah.
I hope you guys aren't telling them about, because we don't even watch the news. So, and then they got another one about George Floyd, about, we know this is traumatizing for everybody. I'm like, not my kids. We don't watch the news. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, my kids know I talk about this stuff, but they weren't aware of all the George Floyd coverage. And this letter was acting as if it's just this groupthink stuff. Like, we all
Oh,
feel
yeah.
this way. You should tell your kids this. And it's like, again, invading into the family.
Yeah.
That's the other. So I'm starting to get nervous about the school. And then my kids are reading this book, Lillian Duncan, I think. And one of my kids was like, it's about one of the kids is a girl trapped in a boy body.
Do they
And
have to read this for school?
yeah, it's
Shut
this.
up.
Yeah, so I'm writing a letter. I'm crafting a letter to the school with my son, and he was great. He was like, I want to say that he was like, just because somebody wears dresses and makeup, because that's what they're talking about, that doesn't mean they're a girl. And I'm
Yeah.
like, excellent. That's, you just hit the nail on the head. He
That's
said that's a
amazing.
stereotype. I said, exactly.
Wow.
You're a
That's
boy
awesome.
and you want to wear a dress and makeup, there's nothing wrong with that. It's almost implying there's something wrong with that, like that you're not a boy, like,
Yeah.
so I mean,
Dennis Rodman was on the cover of Rolling Stone, I think it was, with a wedding dress on.
that's brilliant. I mean, David Bowie,
Yeah.
Boy George, Prince. We have many examples of people. I mean, it's so c- regressive and conserve, and like it feels like 1950s gender roles here that we're presenting to kids. And I'm sure the book isn't very well written. I mean, I used to be a children's librarian. I'm going to read the book before I send the letter to the school, because I'm guessing it's probably not very good, well written book either, but I
Of
could
course
be
not.
wrong.
Of course not.
Probably not, because
It'll be dog shit.
it's basically propaganda, I think. So I'm glad that my child brought that up to me. I'm concerned because I mean, I just went through this thing with Smith College. I really don't want to have to get involved with the school, but again, I can't just not say anything. I can't. I mean,
You're gonna have to, and they're gonna ignore you, by the way. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna tell you. They're gonna ignore you.
yeah, I
And
know. I'm sure they know who I am too. That's the other
yeah,
issue. I'm not like this
yeah.
like anonymous parent. It's Jodi Shaw in the small town. But I've entertained the thought of just hitting. Well, I'm not going to say because then I don't want forget it. I mean, I can't say it. Sorry, I'll tell you
All right,
later.
that's fine. Either way, that
It's disturbing. Why are
it
they read? There's
is
so many great books out there. There's so many great books about the human condition, and
because you're still using their paradigms. I think it's John Haidt who has that metaphor in The Coddling of the American Mind of where it's like you have two football teams and one thinks that they're like, okay, we're playing football, right? And then the other team just gets guns and starts shooting the other side. And they're like, wait a second, I thought we were playing football. And so it's like, yeah, it's bad writing. It's not useful. But the point is that it actually makes a lot of sense within their own internal logic. They're not trying to educate your kid, just like Smith isn't trying to educate those kids. They're not trying to protect your kid, just like Smith wasn't trying to protect those kids. They're not trying to do anything other than impart their ideology onto those kids. That's it. The end. It's really that simple. They could care less about your sons. And I don't say that hyperbolically. And actually, if your sons started to toe the line, they would probably like them a lot. So they would care in that regard, but they only care about them to the degree that they are useful for, it's propagating, it's the cancer propagating itself. So your sons are just they're either potential cancer cells or they're potential antibodies that need to be dealt with, but they're not, you know what I mean? And so I'm not trying to be like a cynic or an asshole, but it just is like that. Smith is the way that it is. And you got to look at the K through 12 as the same.
yeah, it's the same now. Same.
100%.
This started in the institutions.
Oh yeah. That's patient zero. Have you seen that movie? So it's based on a book, but I don't read fiction books anymore. I probably should, but the Annihilation with like Natalie Portman and
Maybe the
it's like,
movie.
yeah, there's a book, but this like meteor lands and then there's this like giant bubble. It actually takes place, I think, in around New England area. So it lands at this lighthouse, I think, somewhere on the East Coast. But anyway, it creates this area called like the Shimmer. And so
Hmm.
it's like there's this barrier that's permeable, but you can't really see through it because it's all shimmery, hence the shimmer, very creative. But like inside of it, it distorts reality and it distorts, like, all the rules are different and the government keeps sending teams in there and none of them are coming back out, but it's like slowly expanding. And when you're in there, like you kind of know something's up, but not everyone does. And
Hmm.
so like I say that I think the major metropolitan areas are the shimmer, and that's why they're all governed similarly, and they have this, like, their reality is not the same as the other. But I think actually the original shimmer was the college campuses, and then it spread out from there. There's this other dude. I want to ask you about your music after this, but I'll tell you reminds me. There's another guy named Ides of Ideas. Sorry to people who like watch my stuff. I talk about a lot of the same things with people, but he came up with this really fascinating example and or observation that I just think is so spot on. He said, uh, cities used to be built around with a church at the middle when we were originally building, cities, and the church was in the middle because that was what was the thing that was shaping the ethics and the values of the community. And even when cities got so big that they had like new districts and stuff, they would have another church in the middle of that. And the point is this is where we're looking to guide our values. And then at some point in time, it shifted to the universities at the middle. And that's what is guiding and shaping the ethics of these cities. And that's why one of the big determining factors of whether or not a city is effing insane is the presence of universities. Like I live in Wyoming. The city I'm in has the only 4-year university in the entire state. And it's like one of only 2 blue areas. The other is Jackson. And it's purple, but it went for like Biden in this last election. Why? The university. So the universities are the original shimmer hive mind, and they spread out to the major metropolitan areas. And that's why a lot of these cities are governed the same, regardless of, like, Atlanta is governed the same way as like Seattle for the most part, And so even places like Austin. And so because they're all part of the same hive mind shimmer thing where reality is distorted and it's just slowly expanding out. I think we're going to have cities that don't, there are cities that don't exist yet. They're going to rise and become competing cities. So like right now I'm in Bozeman, Montana. Now the people in Montana are not real thrilled about this, but like, so last night I go to the grocery store. I asked this woman, I'm like, how come all you have is wine or beer? You don't have any liquor. Is that like a Montana thing? And she goes, I don't know. I just moved here from California. And we had him at the one I worked at in California. And I say, oh, why'd you move here from California? Because it's not California. Like, and the people in Montana hate that. But anyway, I think we're going to have cities to compete with those other cities. I think that's just an extrapolation of that arc you're talking about of these communities. I think we're gonna find each other.
Yeah, I think it's coming. I've heard of so many people are physically moving. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Oh
not
yeah.
that works online. This is in real life. Like I know two musicians who moved to Jacksonville. I mean, I'm like, what, Florida, and another just moved to Miami. This is happening.
We're seeing this in the census data. If you're looking at the states that lost state representatives because of population fluctuations and the one that gained,
Hmm.
look at this. Look at the 2020 census data. It's really fascinating. The fact that I think it was either Oregon or Washington. I think it was Washington gained a state representative is hilarious to me. But California lost reps, Illinois lost reps, Ohio did, but places like Iowa gained,
So that's
Texas
one way to
gained.
do it, folks. Physically move
Yeah,
if you want to affect
it's the flip
Congress.
vote. So before we wrap up, I want to talk. You just mentioned music. I want to talk about your music. Can we talk about your music? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So whenever I first YouTube, your music channel is the first one that pops up if someone searches you on YouTube.
No, I didn't know that, but that pleases me to no end.
Yeah. And so I looked at it. I'm like, it seems really weird that this is the only amount of followers she has or subscribers to this YouTube channel. So I click it and I'm listening and I was like, okay, maybe I should have typed interview after Jodi Shaw, but I'm going to stick with this for a while
Aw.
and so I was listening and it had this kind of, it reminded me of like early to mid 90s, like Jewel, Natalie Imbruglia, gosh, there's another one. I think I actually wrote it down. Fiona
Yeah.
Apple. There's one of them that had a Fiona Apple kind of vibe to it. There was one song you sang that I was like, this is reminding me so much of this Jewel song. What is this effing Jewel song? And so I like had to stop painting and was just like deviating. And it was the Who Will Save Our Souls, or Who Will Save Your Soul by Jewel.
Oh yeah, I like that song.
Yeah. But like
You
what?
were painting when you were painting when you were listening to it?
Yeah. Well, so I'm not an artist. I paint like walls.
Oh, right. You were painting
Yeah,
walls.
yeah, yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it. Got
But I'm really good at painting straight lines, which is why people hire me to do trim work. But anyway, so
it. So I
let's talk a little bit about like just your creative inspirations and just like maybe even just how you filter some of this stuff. Like you're talking about some of the songs that I mean, you don't have to get into the exact songs, but just like how the way you're thinking about what's going on, like music is clearly a lens for you, both as the way you interpret things and think about things, but also the way then you then express like how that process
yeah.
goes
Well,
on.
I think music, it's funny. Somebody asked Donald Trump once, they were trying to pitch something to him. I don't know. I don't really follow that show, The Apprentice, or anything, but I just remember seeing this scene where somebody said they were trying to pitch a product to Donald Trump, and they said, "What's the most popular thing in the world?" And Donald Trump said, "Music." And of course, that wasn't what the guy was trying to pitch to him. He was trying to pitch like an ice cream or something. And
It's a really
but
stupid question if you're trying to pitch ice cream.
I was like,
Sorry.
I guess the guy assumed that ice cream is the most popular thing in the world. But I was like, wow, I think Donald Trump's right. I
Yeah.
think music is the most popular thing in the world. And for me as a musician who played on the subway platforms for several years, for many hours late at night,
Oh wow.
um, for people who don't even speak my language and toured in Europe. And I mean, truly, if something is beautiful and resonates with you, and my music doesn't resonate with everybody, I mean, but there's some form of music that resonates with, I would say, just about everybody. Even people who can't hear can feel vibrations, and it's So for me, to be able to connect with somebody who doesn't even speak my language, they don't even know what I'm singing about, but they have a feeling, and there's a deep, deep, deep connection there when you're on. Like when on a stage or on the subway platform and I'm really in it and I'm connecting with my music, and I'm feeling goosebumps. I know that the people listening are also feeling goosebumps. Maybe not all of them,
Yeah.
but I know like there's some kind of deep, and again, that there's a primal thing going on
Mhm.
that's good. That's good. Like you don't want to kill each other. It's like a love thing. And so, and I use examples like some student. I was we were doing an open house or something at the in Res Life, and we were playing Billie Jean. We were playing, and some students like, oh, Michael Jackson's been canceled. And I remember thinking, yeah, but like I can't help but move my body to this song,
Right.
you know? So it's like it really does transcend the identity of the artist. There's something about the music that's so, the artist is going to die too. That's the other distinction. If you make a great work of art or a great song, like that's going to live on well beyond the artist. That's it. There's something really significant about that. So to me, music is really, really important. It's the same way with comedy. Like if something's funny, it's funny.
Oh,
Like even if you're like, oh, I know I shouldn't be laughing at this because it's not PC or whatever, but I can't help it. Or I shouldn't be enjoying this Woody Allen movie because of what he did, but I can't help it. It's so good.
what's the
You can't
funniest thing that you saw or heard recently? Like, what's the last time you just laughed uncontrollably?
last, well, I laugh frequently.
Sure.
I laughed, I laughed a lot when I was in Portland, hanging out with everyone I hung out with, including Peter Boghossian, who's like possibly mean he was the last person to make me laugh so much in person. But the last thing I saw was Andrew Lawrence, his video called Apology,
Hmm.
and he's apologizing for being a white male,
Hmm.
and he's a comedian.
Yep.
And I think he was just on trigonometry. Like he was being interviewed about how he's been banned from all these clubs or something. But this is so funny. And I posted on Twitter. I'm like, it's just funny, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just
Yep.
funny. And he talks about like, yeah, I'm just gonna say he talks about like when I spill my coffee. I'm paraphrasing. When I spill my coffee on the floor, my Filipino maid comes in to clean it up, and she does it wrong, so I slap her around a bit. I'm thinking about my white privilege. It makes me think about my white privilege. I mean, it's funny.
Hmm.
I can't help it. It's funny, and that's to me like that's so important because it's not political. It's something deeper. There's something so deep about it, and the
Yeah.
song is beautiful. And who was the guy that Hitler listened to? Not Schopenhauer, was it?
Wait, are you talking about this propaganda guy
No,
or
no, no, not the
as a
propaganda.
musician?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't
Anyway,
know.
there's like German music, like people who were Nazi
Oh,
symbol.
David Hasselhoff. He's big in Germany. I think it was Hasselhoff. Pretty sure.
That's funny, Truman. Well, like, there's people like, oh, you're not supposed to or do this or do that, or but it transcends
Oh, yeah.
the shallowness of politics come and go. Let's face it. The Cultural Revolution will come and it will go. And I don't know what state it's going to leave us in. But all I know is that I'm going to be down by the fire with my guitar singing because that's what I know how to do.
They're gonna allow guitars in the gulag, you think?
What?
In the gulag, you think we'll have guitars? That'd be cool. I might try to sneak a harmonica in,
I'm
rectally. Guitar seems like it'd be a painful process.
Yeah, no, you don't use the guitar. You're going to need that harmonica, not just for harmonica playing, but for other things as well, I'm sure.
Sure.
Um, you need lots of tools out of a
I will
harmonica.
wash it thoroughly.
Well, we think we always have our voice. I mean, there's no coincidence that the voice we say if someone's voice is strong, it's a thing. It's a fingerprint. It's our individuality, and that's what connects us universally. Such a
Yeah.
trope, but so true. So anyway, that I'm into music. I'm into music. I like musicians. I like music a lot. I think it's comforting. It gets us through stuff, deep stuff. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about like Trump won. I
Right.
mean, I guess there's probably music that got people through that as well, but
Pussy Riot, whatever that group was.
right.
There's this there's this principle called the Lindy effect.
Mm-hmm.
And Lindy describes it's the exact opposite as what happens with biological things. So with a biological entity like near you, the older we get, the less likely we are to be around in the future, right? Anything that's alive, the older it gets. Lindy describes inorganic like things, and it so like a book, right? Anything, a shoe, and it says that the longer it's been around, the more likely it is to persist into the future. It's proved that it's Lindy. It sticks around. And I think musical instruments are one of those things. That's why, like, you can get all the way back into like biblical, like early Old Testament stuff about like harps and lyres and all of these things. And it's like those still exist. Those are string instruments are going to exist in the future. Drums,
Yeah,
exactly.
pretty old.
Um, and and like literature is like that. Like the older a book is, the more likely it
Singing,
is to be around in the future.
yeah.
So
Spoken word poetry.
exactly, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because oral tradition has been around for a long time, and so it's like music is Lindy, and so I think, or I think music is generally Lindy, but the way that we understand music traditionally, like with instruments, that's Lindy. Like Backstreet Boys, that's not right. You
The
know,
ones heroes.
right? Yeah, it's just the things that like I think I had this conversation with my father-in-law because I listened to a lot of classic rock, and I was like, who in the last 20 years? What are some albums that came out in the last 20 years that I can listen to from start to finish that I will probably listen to 20 years from now? Like it's like less than 10. It might be over 10, but it'd be less than 20. But in terms of like the 20 years before that or the 20 years before that, it just blows up. And I
It,
think it's because we don't have a lot of, and the ones that are from now are actual musicians that play instruments, that do vocals, and it's not just some crap. But there's something that you said, but my point is that you're right. Music's going to be around. It's Lindy. It's not going anywhere, and it endures. It,
we
it
need
has
it. It's
it,
something we actually really
absolutely we do. We psychologically and emotionally need it.
we need it.
And there's something about it. Just to bring it back to something you said earlier, whenever I was doing collegiate ministry, there was a thing that someone said once that it really struck me. They said, whenever we see or encounter something beautiful or captivating, we have two responses that we cannot control. It's just innate in us. One is we are compared to declare its worth. Wow, wow, that's beautiful. And then we're compelled to share it with others and point other people to it. Wow, do you see that? Dude, look at the sunset, man. That is amazing. Are you seeing this? And there's just something about it that's innate to all of us and does
We want to experience it. We want someone else to
want to
experience
share it.
it. Yes.
And so it sounds like that's
Oh,
what you're
yes.
doing. You know, that's the arc you're building, is a place where we can share in beauty together in a way that's just, it transcends everything else.
We need that.
Yeah.
We need that. And the Cultural Revolution is attacking that need and or
Yes.
making it so that we're not able to do that. We're being divided and destroyed in a way that our capacity or ability to do that, to share in that way, is being attacked.
And I think we have a primal thing that's inside of us saying no. And I don't think everyone can identify, they can't put their finger on it. Not everyone,
Yeah,
some can.
that's the confusion, right? Like
But then when they experience, they'll
something's
go,
not right.
that's it. That's what I was missing. I told, we can, start to wrap it up, but I watched, I realized I hadn't laughed in a long time. And this last spring, I watched Tropic Thunder, and I was just laughing hysterically.
Oh, it's a great movie.
It's so good. And it was so like,
Jack Black.
Jack Black's great. Robert Downey, all of them are great. It's such,
Okay.
Tom Cruise. Oh my gosh. So anyway, but it was so impactful on me that I actually even made a post about it on Locals, where I'm like, it felt so good to laugh.
Yes.
It
It
felt
feels
so good to laugh.
Good, Truman. Truman, I didn't realize that. It wasn't until I left Smith. It wasn't until I made a rap video, everybody.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
one of the things Smith wouldn't let me.
Spotify's number 7, up and coming.
Wait, you're kidding about that, right? That's a joke. Yeah, okay. I was like, wait a minute, am I? I'm
No,
in
you
the.
totally are, and you should Google it. I want you to Google it.
I'll say Truman just let me know that.
Yeah.
Just alerted me to this. I made a rap. It wasn't until I made that rap. I don't know what it was about it, but around that time, I started really being able to laugh again. And
Huh.
I forgot what it was like. And I realized I have like, there's a lot of joy inside me. And just, I remember I made this post where there's this guy in my locals group, John, and he just posts the funniest shit. I mean, it's just, and he's a musician, by the way. He's a creative, the funniest shit. And one time I was just trying to read through one of his posts, and I can't get through one of his posts without like pissing my pants, trying not to piss my pants.
Yeah.
So I just recorded myself reading his post and just dying because it's infectious too. I'm
Yeah,
like,
it totally is.
I have to share. It's not
Yeah.
as like my I have to share this joy
Huh.
because it's so amazing to be able to find, and I find so many things funny now that I don't even know if I would have even seen when I was like in this fog of like this miserable. It's just so nice to be able to laugh again. I mean, if I just got back from Portland, I was in New York. I feel like I just laughed the whole time, like with everyone. It was
So
just
good.
like, it's so good to laugh. And it's great to laugh with other people. I went to the Comedy Cellar. Oh my God. I hung out at the Comedy Cellar while I was in New York, and I saw Louis C.K.
Did you really?
I did. I saw Louis C.K.
I
and I saw
love Louis, man.
Al Franken and Steve Attell and Godfrey.
Dave Attell? You mean Dave Attell?
Sorry, Dave Attell, not Steve Attell. Yeah,
And,
Dave
and
Attell.
Gilbert Godfrey? That's a great lineup.
Not Gilbert Godfrey. His name's is just Godfrey, or I forget his name, but it
Okay.
was so great to be in it because I wasn't just laughing like one on one with people, or it was like a whole. That's the beauty of it. It's like you get to laugh, so you get that for yourself, but doing it with others. I mean, it's just like it's like this bond that
Yep.
you have, and it's like not about language. It's deep,
You
and
can't
that's
even
why
put your finger on it.
storytellers. We have storytellers too, like imagine like everything fall. Imagine we don't have the neurosurgeons. We're all dying at age 30. We're but we there was this thing like coming telling stories and singing songs, and that's always, I mean, that goes way back, doesn't it? That's
Yeah,
pretty
it's Lindy. It's the
deep.
Lindy effect. It's always been
Lit-
around.
we need that, and we still are drawn to it. It's very
Yep.
deep.
So why don't you tell people about your work with Counterweight and your work with Integrity Matters and your just what you're doing with your locals community, just so that people can kind of see this arc that you're building in the specific, levels
Oh,
of it.
so I'm associated with Counterweight. I mostly do behind the scenes stuff, and
And tell people what that is. Helen Pluckrose's thing, but a lot of people probably don't know.
yeah, Counterweight is kind of I would say an amazing support network for people who have gone through experiences like I went through, or are currently going through one. People who are encountering this far left orthodoxy at their job, and they're feeling pressure to either say things they don't really believe, or whatever. I mean, we all know what the problem is. And Counterweight has created this amazingly supportive community. And like I said before, it's so important to be able to talk this stuff out so you're not crazy, and you're not racist. Believe me, if you're thinking about this stuff, you're not racist. So like going and being around other people, they have a Discord server. It's huge. There's hundreds of people on it. You can just fill out a form, and you get to go on this Discord server, and it's broken down by profession. So you
Very
can
cool.
find other people in your profession, other medical providers or other psychotherapists or other teachers.
Communities.
Exactly, it's a community. This is so important to be able to talk this through, and then you can brainstorm with these other people's solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And Counterweight will actively help you, like Helen and her team will actively help individuals as well with their issues. And what the amazing thing I love about Counterweight is they don't push people to do things that people either don't want to do or they aren't ready to do.
Hmm.
They meet people where they're at. Not everybody wants to make a video
Hmm.
on.
Yep.
Not everybody wants to be in the New York Post, or sue their organization. Some people simply want to find a way to keep, we talked about this, but to keep their heads down, their mouth shut, without, or whatever, or right, maybe. I know that Counterweight, one solution for people was to join their DEI committee.
Yeah.
That's how they were able to
Disrupt it from the inside. Yeah.
just either disrupt it or say, hey, I have this other solution for how we
Hmm.
can meet these stated outcomes, which is, that's the whole other thing. What are the outcomes? But these purported outcomes, I have this other solution. Like it might be Chloe Valdery's theory of enchantment or whatever. Like if we're going to do trainings, let's do this other one. Let's do nonviolent communication. That's a great thing we can do. So they've managed to go in and change and I'm, to be honest, I think a lot of people in their workplace are probably relieved.
Yeah.
Like, oh, thank God, like we're still fulfilling the requirement, but we're doing it in a sane way. And or they have templates for writing letters to your employer. They just like troubleshoot. They can put you in touch with lawyers in a limited capacity. um the So that's what I love about Counterweight. They don't force anybody. They try to meet you where you're at. And but there's kind of a cultural thing going on, because in the UK they don't have at will employment.
Yep.
So Counterweight's based in the UK. And they do have a lot of American people who come to them, but in this country it's a little more complicated because we have at will employment. So you don't go along with this orthodoxy, they're not going to say, well, you're not going along with the orthodoxy, so you're fired. They're going to say, I don't like the color of your shoes, you're fired. They're going to
Yeah.
find some other reason. And like they tried to do with me, putting me under investigation. So I I have actually raised Counterweight also puts out scholarship. They have videos. There's a lot of good stuff there. So I highly recommend going to counterweightsupport.com. So in this country, we have lawsuits. That's mostly where people have to go because they're going to get fired. They can't push as much as people in the UK can. Or you can't say too much because you have at will employment. I mean, you are protected for improving working conditions. So I highly recommend going that route or framing it that way, because it's true too. So I managed to raise a lot of money. I had a GoFundMe, and I want to help other people in my situation. So I tried really hard to figure out. Did give some of the money away to people. I gave some money to plebity.org, which is also a great organization. They have a free speech fund now. They have a couple funds, so people can go there. So I'm tangentially involved with them. But there are there are all kinds of implications. You can't just give a lot of money away. I found out.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'm started my own organization. Cut to the chase. It's called integritymatters.org. And I will be funding other people who are in hostile work environments or any hostile environment, and they need help. They need financial help to hire a lawyer, so on and so forth. But so there's that. But the main thrust of Integrity Matters is to support integrity in America, and to support artists, because that's,
Uh,
again, we just talked all about that. That's the main branch. So artists are having a hard time getting grants now, unless, because the grant producing bodies are paying more attention to their identity than the work they're doing.
mhm.
Like, and if you don't fit the right identity, then we're not going to fund your work. Or you need to be infusing social justice into your work in some manner and explain to us how you're doing that. And then maybe we'll give you a grant. And so I mean, artists have always had it. I mean, it's always difficult to be an artist and make ends meet, but now artists are losing access to grants and artists who are making really good work. So I want to support artists who are making great work regardless of identity and politics or religion or belief system. So and that's always subjective. So that's one of the things. And I also just want to promote this whole idea, all the ideas that we were just talking about culture, and try to educate people more about culture, because a lot of culture is unconscious, like about how comedy works and why
Yeah.
it's important, and try to do the rah for let's do more comedy because it's really, and here's why we need it. Like, here's why it's actually not just this like fun extra layer. Like it's critical to a civilized, being able to function in a civilized society with each other without killing each other. So I'm promoting more awareness about culture and how culture works. So I'm going to be like, and just trying to build a community. And
Yeah.
in real life too. I'm gonna be doing a lot of in real life stuff and hopefully having events and stuff for artists of
Very cool.
all genres, all
Yeah.
things.
Well,
So
I
matters. Yeah.
sure just all categories, right?
Yeah. All
I
categories.
also want to support artists who do good work, and so that's why everyone should go and check out your music on YouTube and anywhere else you can find it. Jodi Shaw's music, and on your, and not just that, but the work that you're doing in this space. So what, your Twitter and your locals, you
Thank
want to
you
plug
so much.
those?
Yeah. Well, my Twitter is Smith Surge.
Yep.
I think if you Google Jodi Shaw Smith College, probably the Twitter will come up. And I have a locals community too. It's just Jodi Shaw locals, but I'm going to be talking more on locals about the art stuff.
Cool.
And I just recorded a bunch of songs because I want artists to be doing their work, and I'm like, well, I should be doing my work, and I want to be doing my work. I've been wanting, so I just recorded like 24 songs in 2 weeks, and I'm finishing. I'm doing the arrangements and the mixing, so I'm excited about that. I'm going to be posting all that stuff
And
on my
you got Yeezy on one of those tracks, right?
Easy.
It's
You mean
Kanye
that?
West.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm working with Yeezy.
um,
I know who you're talking
and
about.
yeah, and I'm going to make sure that all the links to everything you just talked about, whether it's counterweight or plebity or any of those things, I'll get all those in the description of this.
Oh yeah,
Um,
so counterweight, plebity, integritymatters.org,
yeah,
local
I'll get all of them in there.
music, Jodi Shaw music, YouTube
Yeah,
or Spotify.
or Spotify. Yeah, you're also
Follow
on
me
the
on
hip hop
Spotify.
playlist. Jodi, this has been a lot of fun. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I stop recording? I mean, this has been, I mean, super. I've really enjoyed this. Is there just anything else you want, parting
I've
words you want
really
to leave
enjoyed
people
it
with?
too. I really like the way that you, Truman, tell stories to explain things. I, I it's just so much fun and so much easier to understand. I love that. You're obviously a very creative person. And yeah, I really enjoy speaking with you. To everyone out there, like your voice, that still small voice inside you, well, maybe not so still, that's saying something's not quite right. That voice is important. Don't push it away. It's not bad. It's not racist. It means something's not right. So start paying attention to that voice. And if you're a creative person, do your work. Like, do what you need to do to clean that hall monitor out. Like, it's a process. It's not just gonna, it comes back and it goes back. Like, just start talking to other people about it so that you can do your work, because we need you.
Yeah, yeah, that
That's
matters. That's great. That's a great place to end it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Jodi. This has been a
thank you.
pleasure. Everyone, please go check out all of these things. Check her. It's not just the Smith stuff. There's a whole lot of Jodi, going on other than that. So please check her out, support her work, support the things she's doing. Again, Jodi, pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this. All
Thank
right.
you so much, Truman. It's been great.
Peace.